video so then access to it. And then I'm going to share the screen. And we are going to go straight on to business, so to speak. Okay, let me see if I can move this. All right. So as I told you, welcome again. It's been really a pleasure so far to talk and interact with so many of you. You're all going to Sicily. And so you will notice that when you go to Italy, or when you ask someone if they are Italians, where are they from? Most people that come from Italy, they will tell you, I am Italian. Not so when it comes to Sicily. If you ask a Sicilian where they are from, they will not tell you that they are from Italy. They will tell you, I am Sicilian, sono siciliano. And that is because Sicily still retains, much more so than any other place of Italy, a very strong identity. So much that we have in Italy a national anthem called Fratelli d'Italia, but in Sicily, they have their own national anthem, which I am going to start this lecture with. And this national anthem, I found a not perfect version with English subtitles for you. It's called Madre Terra di Uomini e Dei, Mother Earth of Man and Gods. And according to Tomasi di Lampedusa, the author of the Leopard, Il Gattopardo, the Sicilians don't want to improve because they are already perfect. They believe themselves to be gods. However, when you go to Sicily, you will see again that this is a very special land, and certainly paradise is not that far. I will play just a little bit to give you an idea, and then we will move to the rest of the history. Bene, non vi faccio ascoltare tutto perché ho solo 30 minuti e quindi 30 minuti e 3000 anni. I only have 30 minutes and 30,000 years of history to cover. And therefore, let's go to the next slide. I have to keep it this way because if I put it in full screen, your president will not be able to see the lecture. So Italy has 58 UNESCO sites. It is the place, it is the land with the most UNESCO sites in the world. 7 of those are in Sicily, just to give you an idea of what's, the amazing World Heritage sites that are here. So we have Piazza Armerina, which we will see each one of them very quickly, but just, that's where they are put, Piazza Armerina. And then we have the Temple Volley, with Agrigento, and then we have the Aeolian Islands. All of them are patrimony, heritage, world heritage. And then we have the Baroque with Noto, and then we have Syracuse, of course. The city of Syracuse is also world heritage. And then we have the Mount Etna, and then we have the whole of Palermo with Cefalù and Monreale. Okay, you probably saw in the hymn this. This is the symbol of Sicily. It's called the Trinacria. Why Trinacria? Well, the symbol is very old and very mysterious. However, most scholars believe that it came to represent the land of Sicily because if you see it, it's a triangle. 1, 2, 3. And so Trinacria, right, represent the 3 farther corners of Sicily. And this is the official flag of the region of Sicily. You will see it out of the Norman Palace. It is, of course, the head of the Gorgon. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but then during the Roman domination, the snakes were supplanted by wheat because Sicily was the granary of Rome. Sicily and then later Alexandria of Egypt were the two lands that brought the grain to the city of Rome. The story of Sicily is very old. The first three groups that lived in Sicily were the Elimi, the Sicani, and the Siculi, from where the word Sicelia, which is the ancient name of Sicilia, Sicily, comes from. They were also the Phoenicians right here. And then later, the first colony, as I told you, Naxos, the Greeks. So Phoenicians came from the word phoinox, which is Greek again, and it indicates the color of purple red. And the Phoenicians were famous for the dyes of purple red, which were very precious and, of course, very expensive. And they brought the alphabet to Sicily. And so the Phoenicians settled in over here. We have this little island of Mozia. So the temples of basically Erice, Segesta, all this part, Trapani, was all Phoenicians. We still have the museum that hosts an old Phoenician ship, which was recovered off the coast. It's a Punic warship, so back to the Romans. And this is the famous Mozia's mask. And this, as you can see, this mask it's not clear what the function was. However, according to Diodorus Siculus, this mask was worn by the fathers of the firstborn infant, and it was worn to bring the infant to be sacrificed to the god Baal. And so the mask has a smile as the father was smiling to the god, but it's a smile of pain because, of course, the father also felt the pain of having to give up his firstborn child for the well-being of the family and of the subsequent children that would have been born into the family. It's not clear. This is just a tradition. We don't know for sure. But this mask is very ancient, and it's also in the same museum. The Phoenicians also brought the art of preserving salt. The salt fields of Mazara del Vallo are still there. The salt was called the white gold back then because before refrigerators, we needed salt, especially salt to preserve the fish. And much of the Sicilian economy, even today, is based on fish and fishermen. The Phoenicians lost eventually. They started, they were governed basically for a long time. The Greeks and the Phoenicians coexisted. Eventually, the Greeks took over. The Greeks started the first golden age, which started in 734. Naxos was, in fact, colonized in 735. It's the first colony. Here we have the Greek theater of Syracuse. Of course, the legend says that a colony of Greeks came by and they saw that it was so beautiful. They tried to, the Sicily was so beautiful, they tried Theocles, and then he tried to convince the Athenians to come, but the Athenians wouldn't budge. So he went to the Chalcedonians, and so many, the Greeks started flowing to Sicily from many parts, and eventually they settled, and they basically each colony was independent. Each city had their own agora and their own government. And the Greeks brought a lot of good things. They brought what we call salumi, so charcuteries. They brought olives and the art of olive oils, which is still great in the Sicilian economy. And they brought wines, so the art of vineyards. And then, of course, later, as they developed, they also brought their own culture, their own architecture, their own philosophy. I would like to remind you that Syracuse at the time was probably the greatest city and the wealthiest city into the Mediterranean. And in 480 before Christ, the tyrant Gelone, after winning a battle, the famous Battle of Hiera against the Phoenicians, he built the Temple of Athena, which is today is the Cattedrale di Santa Lucia, so St. Lucy Cathedral in Syracuse, which you will see promptly. He was so rich that he was able to send 420 pounds of gold to the sanctuary of Delphi. And here in Syracuse, we have Archimedes, who was lost to us during the Roman siege of Syracuse. He was accidentally killed by a soldier who did not recognize him. Cicero later boasted that he found the grave of Archimedes, but we lost it. We don't know where it is nowadays. We had Empedocles again. We had Gorgias, the philosopher. We had the first mime. The first mime that we know of was here in Syracuse because, of course, this theater was built. And in this very theater, you will see still the inscriptions that bear the name of the tyrants and their families that used to sit in this very theater in which you will sit when you will go and visit. The last colony of the Greeks to be founded was the colony of Agrigento. Agrigento, again, in ancient Greek means promontory. And we still have the Temple of the Concordia. We are talking about the greatest and the biggest archaeological park of Europe, and it expands for 1,300 hectares. The Temple of the Concordia is the best preserved, and of course, I mean, it seems strange to say it's the best preserved. It used to be covered in marbles. It was, you know, a temple of, and you will see it, it's immense proportion. It's not the only temple. Of course, there are others not so well preserved. Some of them have crumbled down. And later on, this archaeological park was also used as a catacombs for the Christians once Sicily became Christian. Now, Archestratus, 4th century BC. We are still into the Greek. This is the first cookbook. We don't have the whole cookbook, but we have fragments of them. And Archestratus, and in general, later on, the Roman patrician family would require the Sicilian cooks, Sicilian chefs. They were among the most sought after. Archestratus in particular was said to have a palate so fine and so well developed that he could tell if a particular fish had been fished with a waning moon or with the rising moon. Just so, I mean, of course, this is a legend, but the other things that you need to consider is that an aspect of today in modern Sicily is its cuisine, and it was even in the 4th century before Christ. After the Greeks came the Romans, and no, the Romans did not bring along a golden age. The Romans were ruling Sicily. As I told you about the siege of Syracuse, Syracuse was unfortunately destroyed after a long siege. They fought strenuously, but they lost. And then, of course, the Romans sent this guy called Verre. And Cicero was so disappointed and so scandalized by the vandalism, and Verre basically appropriated himself of all of the statues and treasures that he could find, and he brought them back to Rome. And so much that Cicero said, I used to go and hire guides. Yes, tourism in Syracuse was ongoing during the Roman time. And Cicero used to say, I used to go and hire guides. They would show me the city of Syracuse, and they would show me all these beautiful sites and statues. And now the guides are just telling me what used to be there and has been stolen away. So, he literally brought this guy, Verre, to the Senate, in front of the Senate, and he was eventually convicted of corruption. But the Romans did not have a golden age. They exploited Sicily. The first 2 centuries of the Roman domination brought poverty to Sicily. And later Sicily was transformed into the granary, basically, of Rome. However, of the Roman domination in Sicily, we have the other UNESCO site, which is the Villa Romana del Casale, the Roman villa. This villa has more than 3,500 square meters of mosaic floors, which were miraculously preserved because the whole villa was submerged by a mudslide. And so the mud covered the mosaic for a long time and preserved them, very similar to what happened in Pompeii, you know, with the ashes. And you will see some of those mosaics are amazing. This is from the Little Hunt. And this actually shows us how, and this mosaic is very long, is over 20 meters long. It's enormous. And you will see it in details. And what it shows us, well, it shows us something interesting. It shows us how the Romans were hunting for wild animals in northern Africa. And they got the ostriches over here. And, you know, you can see the gazelle, and they were bringing it up on the ship. And then what you see, the 2 went up, but only 1 went down. It even shows the accuracy of the cost of lives of these animals. You will be amazed about what you see in this villa. And not only that, but ta-da! The bikini girls. So you can see that there is the winner that is about to be crowned has even the mosaic is so clear that it even shows a little scar on the knee of this athlete girl. The bikini were actually called subligar in ancient Roman times, but you will see these girls that will lift weights and will be in a gym very much as girls are today in a modern gym. So when after or just about the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which, as you know, fell in 476, when the last emperor Romulus Augustus was deposed in Ravenna by Odoacre. So Sicily was first conquered by the Vandals, who then sold the island to Odoacre king, to the king of the barbarians, and the left Sicily pretty much alone, but they protected it with their armies. And so the barbarians somehow ended up being almost better than at least the first 2 years of the Roman dominations. Now, when soon after, as the Roman Empire fell, the Western Roman Empire, then Sicily went under the domination of the Eastern Roman Empire, which will fall much later after Byzantium, basically. This is, of course, is in Ravenna, is not, but this shows the Emperor Justinian. This is in Ravenna, but the Byzantine basically ruled Sicily for some time, and they brought silk, and most importantly, they brought the maestranze. So they brought the master craft of mosaics, of the golden mosaics, which were later used by the Normans to build the other UNESCO sites, like, for example, the cathedral in Monreale. By the way, I will have to tell you, unfortunately, they started the restoration in Monreale this year. So a lot of, at least when I was there this June, the right side of the Cathedral Monreale, where you have St. Peter and you have Lazarus, it is covered, it's scaffolded. So I don't know how much you will be able to see by the time you get there, or maybe they even covered more of it with a scaffold. I hope not, but we will see this cathedral better. However, the Arabs, and this is starts the second golden age of Sicily, the Arabs came along in 827, and they stayed until the 1061, until the Normans came. So they conquered Sicily and they divided it in three different separate kingdoms. And the Arabs brought an amazing wealth of knowledge, of food, of course, because the Arabs brought the rice. They brought the green gold, pistachios. They brought oranges. And of course, they brought their knowledge, their architectural sites. Now, unfortunately, in Sicily, there are no surviving original Arabic structure. Some of them are Arab inspired, but what you see is oftentimes reconstruction of the later Norman Empire. The most notable influence is in the language, in the Sicilian language. A lot of names, especially around Palermo, are still derived from the Arab language. But in the cuisine, I will show you this, is of course the Arab ship coming, but the cuisine that is in Palermo right now, I mean, not only in Palermo, in the whole of Sicily, that comes from the Arab is the cassata, the cannoli. Cannoli is an Arabian word which means little tube. Little tube, in fact, it's a tube filled in with ricotta, ricotta cheese, and the arancini, which are in fact filled with rice, for example. And they remember vaguely the falafel, right? So that's all of Arabic influence. And then in 1066 came the Normans. So we usually refer as the second golden age as the Arab Norman period. Why? Because when the Norman came, the Normans mean the Hauteville family. The Hauteville family were originally Vikings, although they were given a feud in Hauteville, France. But before then, they came from Vikings. They figured out they are Northerner, can't cook. Food, no good. So they embraced the Arabic traditions. They left pretty much the Arab free to rule, free to govern. In fact, at the court of these Norman kings, they employed as state officers many Islamic people. Frederick II, the Stupor Mundi, the marvel of the world, it was called, probably the most influential king of southern Italy. He spoke 6 languages: Latin, of course, Sicilian, which was kind of close to modern Italian, but not quite. So Sicilian, Latin, Greek, French, and Arabic. And he spoke Arabic so well that when he went on to the crusade, because the Pope, in a sense, wanted him to, you go fight the infidel. He went to Jerusalem. He, by the way, had married also the daughter of the king of Jerusalem. He went to Jerusalem and he brought gifts to the Sultan, and he started speaking in his own language. And they say, now we don't want to fight each other. Let's do this. We just divide the city of Jerusalem in 2. You take this and we take that, where the Holy Sepulchre is, and we're all good together, and not a single, drop of blood needs to be spilled. And that peace, of course, the Pope was enraged and immediately excommunicated him. Frederick II, yes, of the Swabs. And I will tell you a little bit. So he was the son of Costas of Hauteville. Dante meets her in Paradise, in the 3rd canto Paradise. She gave birth to him when she was 40. And because she was so old, for the time it was almost unheard of, she had to give birth to him publicly on the public square of Jesi. And this is an old manuscript that depicts exactly that. Because people were saying, the son is not her, it's not legitimate, it cannot be possible. So she showed that it was possible. And at the court of Frederick II, we had the invention of the sonnet. The sonnet was invented by Jacopo da Lentini, the Sicilian school of poets. He had a court with incredible mathematics discoveries, and also astronomical mathematicians from the Arab side. he was truly a king of modern views. There was this constant syncretism, you know. He did not care which religion people were professing. Everybody was free to profess. There were even Jews at his court. And so Frederick II was, however, not in Hauteville. It was a Swab. And unfortunately, his lineage stopped. And he stopped with his illegitimate son, Manfredi di Svevia, which he had from Bianca Lancia, who was his mistress. Then he became his third wife later. And Manfredi was also mentioned in Dante's Divine Comedy, in Purgatory, third. And I will not read the whole canto. You can have my presentation afterward. But of him, he says, he was fair, haired and handsome, and his aspect was noble, but one eyebrow had been cleft by a sword stroke. And this is because the Pope, if the Swabs, Hauteville Normans, had one defect, was that they were independent from the Pope, and they would not accept any interference in the way they governed from the Pope. And so the Pope was not happy with that. And so he teamed up with Charles of Anjou, the Angevin family. And Charles came down with his army, and he defeated Manfredi in the famous battle that was the Battle of Benevento in 1266, which literally put to an end the clause of the Ghibellines, meaning the ones who were in favor of the emperor. There were two parties in the Middle Age, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. The Guelphs were supporting the church and the Pope, and the Ghibellines were supporting the emperor. That was the end. There was one grandson, Corradino, and if you look at the dates, 1252, 1268, you will notice that the Pope had him captured and beheaded at the age of 17. And that was the end. However, what they did still holds today. This is the first king of Sicily, Roger II. And as you see, you will see this in the Chiesa di Santa Maria dell'Ammiraglio, which is this one. And you will see something interesting, that the king of Sicily is crowned by Christ himself, and not by the Pope, like Charlemagne, and like the tradition. It was the Pope that was supposed to crown the kings of Sicily, not in this case. The Hauteville, the Normans, created the Monreale Cathedral, which is the golden church. It's a church resplendent in gold, but you also see the influential of the Arabic designs. And the maestranze, the famous Byzantino maestranze, were called to work at this church. And it will, I mean, I don't want to talk too much on this church. It's one of my favorite, but there is a straight line from Mary in the back all the way to the Christ Pantocrator, the creator of the world. And you will have several columns where you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it's all covered in gold, the gold that represents the divine light, the gold. And so the outside of the church is demure, because for the Christian is what's inside. And when you enter, you are literally, you know, almost your eyes, especially if there is the light. It was built in a way that now it cannot be done anymore, but there was supposed to have a direct light that would come into the church and follow the canonic calendar, and at each different month of the year, it would make one particular story shine. It's not so anymore, unfortunately, but because some of the windows were later closed. This Constance of Hauteville, as well as her son Frederick, are resting in the Cathedral of Palermo. And this is their sarcophagus. You can go see the crypts. They are in porphyry, which, as you know, is the symbol of the emperors and the kings. There is no more porphyry in the world. And this is their grave. And the Norman palace, of course, was created by the Arabs, but was later expanded by the Norman kings. And of course, it also has the Palatine Chapel, which is a miniature Monreale, and you can see on the ceilings the muscarnas. And look at this. These are Arabs. They are wearing turbans and they are dressed and they're sitting like Arabs. So again, even in the Norman palace, you have the Arab master crafters, and then you have the Byzantium master crafter, and they work side to side and they create this unique work of art. You will find them only in Palermo and nowhere else in Italy. This is again another example with the Duomo of Cefalù. As I told you, the bad guy, Charles of Anjou, came down to Sicily to govern the Angevins, but it didn't last very long. And that because the Sicilian people didn't take the yoke very well. Apparently the French were raping the women, they were stealing their homes. And so they revolted in what is called the Sicilian Vespers. If you are an opera fan, you know that Giuseppe Verdi also wrote an opera called I Vespri Siciliani. And what they did is they called back, they chased the Angevins away, which then set their court in Naples. And that's why the kingdom of two Sicilies, because one of the court was in Naples and the other one was in Sicily. And that was that Costanza, who was Manfredi's daughter, so King Frederick II's granddaughter, married Peter of Aragon. And so Peter of Aragon and Costanza ruled Sicily until, of course, the House of Aragon, via marriage with Isabel of Castile, right, became unified Spain. And therefore, the Spanish kingdom took place from 1469 until 1860, which is the year of Italians' unification. And how did Spanish kings who did not reside in Sicily govern? Well, through the same way that they govern their colonies in the United States, with viceroy. And of course, this viceroy were, you know, in part corrupted. You know, there was a caste of noblemen that detained most of the wealth, and, you know, poor people in some way suffered. And then during this period, we're talking about the 17th century, something else happened in Sicily. Something terrible in a way, because in 1693, there was a terrible earthquake that shattered many and destroyed many cities. And because of that, new cities were rebuilt, and they were rebuilt in the new Baroque style, giving birth to a particular art, which again, you will not find anywhere else, which is called Sicilian Baroque. And this is particular in the Val di Noto. In Noto in particular, you'll see the old city up in ruins, still left in ruins, and then the new city, which is built below. And the Baroque, of course, this is the Chiesa della Collegiata. You will see it in Catania. The Baroque was meant to create marvel. It's filled with statues, and of course you see that the shape itself is kind of a pyramid shape. So they will have different form, convexes, for example. And even inside the churches, this is the Casa Professa in Palermo, which are incredibly carved and rich in marbles of different colors, right? Using different color marbles is also one of the characteristic of the Baroque styles. Now we have to talk about Sicilian cuisine, because as I said, it started a long time ago, but what happened in the Renaissance, you know, the cuisine, the famous cuisine was French, was not Italian. But Marie Antoinette's sister, the last of the 13 children of Marie Therese, Maria Carolina, married Ferdinand I of Bourbons. Back then, they were back to the Bourbons. They were still the Spanish house, but they were called Borboni. And so what happened? Well, she insisted to bring French chefs to Sicily, and these French chefs became all the rage. And the noble families decided that they had to have a French chef. It was a status symbol. You couldn't be noble and aristocratic and rich unless you had a French chef to boast for your balls and your receptions. And those French chefs were called Monsieur, which is, you know, Monsieur. They were called Messier, but in Sicilian they became Monsieur. And they developed what is still pretty much the basic of Sicilian cuisine today. They took what they could find from the land of Sicily and they mixed it up with the French, with the French cuisine, which they knew. And this monsieur created pasticcio di maccheroni, so like macaronis, pasticcio, which is a kind of a cake, filled up with macaroni in butter, very rich with butter, or gelatina in the rum. If you want to know more, in the Leopard, for example, there's a whole description of this cuisine. And there is even a couple of cuisines book by this monsieur. One of them is called Cavalcanti. And of course, the Sicilian language has been influenced by cuisine. This is fennel. And we still say in Italian, non farti infinocchiare, don't be fennelled. What does it mean? Well, the people that own the vineyards used to put fennel in the wine so that you could not feel, you could not taste if the wine had some defects. And so that's why non farti infinocchiare means don't be deceived, right? Make sure that nobody's deceiving you. And so this is still modern Italian, but it comes from the use of fennels in Sicilian cuisine.
Another word, finocchio?
No, but that has nothing to do with infinocchiare. Infinocchiare means finocchio simply is a derogative word to indicate a gay person. But this is completely different. Infinocchiare just means to deceive somebody originally by putting fennel in the wine. And then Italians, Sicilians. Here comes Italian unity, of course, in 1860. As you can say, the famous expedition of the 1000, well, there were a little bit less than 1000, but Garibaldi then Garibaldi was a great fighter, but was not a good governor. And so left Sicily into the hands of the Savoy. Sicily became annexed basically to the Northern King of Piedmont, the Savoy House, and it stayed that way until 1946 when we had a referendum and we ousted the monarchy and we became a republic. So modern Sicily, at the beginning of the 20th century, Sicily had a very strong economy based on sulfur mines, the zolfatari. And the zolfatari, as you can see, these are the little children called Caruso. The families were so poor that they would sell the children when they were very small because you had to crawl into the mines, and so only children could go in some of the tunnels. This was a plague, but of course, when the sulfur went out of business by 1950s, basically it was over with. Mussolini tried to resurrect it briefly, but was not able to. However, what comes from Sicily is something that may come onto your table every day. The tuna factory on the island of Favignana, the Florio family invented the new method of preserving the tuna fish under oil. So the cans of tuna fish you eat today came from a method that was invented in Sicily at the time. The Florio family were basically active during the Belle Époque. And they also had the Marsala wine, which is basically a comfort wine. It's a sweet, can be sweet, can also be not so sweet, but is a fortified wine. And of course, Sicily has great wines. As you can see, I made the Malvasia, of course, and the Zibibbo are especially sweet. But we also have il Nerello Mascalese, il Cataratto. These are autochthonous, meaning some of the most ancient cultivations come from Sicily. But of course, Sicily has also more modern Chardonnay, for example, vineyards. So there is a little bit of both. So there is the modern and there is the ancient one, like Nero d'Avola, which is, for example, comes from the Bacche Nere, means the black grapes of Sicily. Which it was born in Sicily. The Florio also started the first automobile race called the Targa Florio. And if you want to know more, guess what? On October 25, they're coming in on Disney Plus, and you can see the whole saga of the Florio family, which, you know, some of it, you still have it today. I mean, the Marsala Florio is still on sold today. And of course, on the island of Favignana, there is still the tonara, the tuna. We're almost done. So the last UNESCO sites are Caltagirone, which is very famous for the ceramics. You have, if you love pottery and ceramics in Caltagirone, there are some of the most ancient and most appreciated ceramics in the world. So you can go to the city of Caltagirone and see the Museum of Ceramic, which is there. And of course, see also how they do them. You can see and visit labs of ceramics. And when you go to Sicily, almost everywhere you will see these two heads. And these are called graste in Sicilian, Moor's head. And the story is that, of course, there was a Moor who fell in love with a woman that was at the window, and she was tending to her pretty plants. And the two of them fell in love, but he did not tell her he had a dark secret. And the dark secret was that he had a family already with children elsewhere. And so the time to go back to his family came. He told her the truth. She was enraged, killed him, cut his head, put the head on the bottom of the pot and covered it with earth, and then started growing basil. And the basil was so fragrant and so big, because of course was very well attended, you know, by the rotted head before underneath, that all the neighbors were looking at this marvel of basil and they wanted the pot for themselves. And so the neighbors started getting similar pots, thinking that it was the pot and so, you know, basically that's the legend. And a similar legend was in fact reported in the Decameron by Boccaccio. Similar, not quite the same, but you know, so you will see these two heads in particular all over the places, and of course they will be also produced in Caltagirone. Now, if I will leave you some time for questions. I hope we didn't go too much, like, yeah, we went a little bit over. 3,000 years of history was really hard to do in 30 minutes. So, but I hope you had a taste of it at least.
Yes.
Great. So we'll probably have about a couple of minutes only, because Maricar has to do her presentation. And so, and yes, I'm teaching Latin right next afterwards, but yes. Any questions?
Pirandello was Sicilian?
Yes.
Cool.
And he also owned the sulfur mine, by the way. Pirandello is a Nobel Prize for literature, and he was probably the greatest playwright after Goldoni, which came 200 years. He lived during fascism, basically, during the Ventennio Fascista. Yes.
Any similarity between the culture in Napoli and the culture in Sicily?
Well, of course, I mean, there are some similarities. However, they really became two distinct governments, because the court was always in Naples. And so in Sicily, it was more, there was a viceroy in Sicily and a viceroy in Naples, but in Naples also was the actual king of Naples, while in Sicily it was never there. And there was one viceroy that had two courts, one in Palermo and one in Catania. So, I mean, there are similarities. You'll see some of the Baroques, but the two islands, I mean, the island and the city of Naples kind of follow different paths, and they have different cuisines as well. Mhm.
So Sicily is very independent.
Correct, and it is recognized so by the Italian government because Sicily is a regione a statuto speciale. It has a special statute, and it doesn't depend on Rome, but it auto-governs itself.
During the Mussolini years, Sicily, is this Mussolini at all? Or was it when it become part of the-
No, I mean, during the Mussolini years, actually, Sicily was not accorded a special statute. That was later. Mussolini simply was annoyed by the mafia, although I told you I was not gonna talk about the mafia, and that's when he rounded up all the mafia boss and he shipped them over to the United States. So yeah. Mhm.
Can you say something about this? I'm not gonna pronounce it correctly. Saracens.
I Saraceni, the
Yeah.
Saracens. Okay, so you mean in after the Arabs were gone?
Understand who they were.
Oh, you mean the Arabs who conquered the
No, no,
Sicily?
Sarah-
Saracens are, so when we say Saraceno,
Yeah.
Saracens, we don't mean the Arabs that in 827 conquered Sicily. We talk about the Ottomans that after the fall of Constantinople came to Sicily and started basically doing plundering and pirates, you know, so this is why in Sicily, for example, and much of the coast of Italy if you go to Naples is the same, Calabria is the same. We have these towers that are guarding against the Saracens that would come from the north. And this is why a lot of cities and villages in Sicily, they're not so close to the sea, but they are on big mountains or promontory away from the sea, because the Saracens would come from the sea and they would plunder the coast.
Who works here? My impression is that there were blondes, Chile. There was a period where there were people who were blonde, blue-eyed.
But those are not the Saracens. Those are the Normans. The Normans are blonde with blue eyes. The Saracens are the Ottomans. I Saraceni were the Ottomans. The blonde and blue eye, the fair skin, are those nowadays too. There still are there, but those are the ones that will bring in their DNA the Normans, who came from the north, and in fact they were Vikings.
Got it.
Frederick II himself was blonde with blue eyes.
So I've got
Okay.
those.
No, those are mixed up. They're two different things. Okay. All right, Maricar, it's up to you. And we say goodbye to your president. Thank you so much for your
Bye.
presence.
Thank you for accommodating me. I appreciate it.
And you can have this presentation then recorded if you need to see it again. Okay.
What year was Frederick II? What year was?
Frederick II was born in, he was dead basically in 1250. So he was 60 when he died. So yes, 1198, correct. Because, all right,
Okay,
great.
Thank
I
you.
will give the computer to now Maricar. So I will take this away.
They're preparing our
I will
aperitivo,
put-
so we get ready to cheer, and I want to take lots of pictures. This is going worldwide. So